Good morning everybody and welcome to ProtectX9. My name is Roger Edwards and on behalf of Kevin Carr and Joe Miller from the rest of the Protection Review team, we'd like to thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Whether you're watching this live on Thursday, the 3rd of April 2025, or indeed whether you're watching this later as a replay on YouTube. We'd also like to thank our partners for ProtectX9, HSBC Life. As always, the format this morning will be as follows. 7 speakers, each speaking for 7 minutes, followed by a 30-minute live debate in the studio. Hot topics, controversial topics, topics that we think will stimulate debate across the protection industry, and we'd like you to be involved in that debate. If you have a question or a comment that occurs to you as a result of watching the talks, please do post a comment on LinkedIn. Just remember to use the hashtag ProtectX9. That's the hashtag ProtectX9. Before we start, I'd like to give you a few dates to put into your diary. Protect Z, which is our conference where every speaker is under the age of 30, will take place in central London on the 19th of June, and we'd love you to be there. Each company gets 1 free place, but you can book other places for a small fee. If you want to come along, get in touch. Indeed, if you want to be a speaker, also get in touch, but remember, you've got to be under the age of 30. Towards the back end of the year, the Protection Review Conference, Dinner and Awards will be back at the fabulous Landmark Hotel in London on the 27th of November. We really are looking forward to seeing you there for the conference, dinner and awards. And you know what? We've already sold over half of the tables for the dinner. So if you want your table, if you want to secure your table, please get in touch with us as soon as possible before they all sell out. Our topic for ProtectX9 is the humanity of protection value. As an industry, do we truly understand what value means when it comes to protection products? And are we any good at communicating that value to our customers and to the advisors that recommend our products? To get things started, we are welcoming back to the ProtectX virtual stage a speaker who's appeared many times at Protection Review events. He's a very popular Protection Review speaker. Please welcome to the virtual stage from Quietroom, Rhys Williams.
We need to talk about value. I've read the Consumer Duty in all its glory. The FCA says so. More specifically, we need to talk about the relationship between value and something that's mentioned in the Consumer Duty, consumer understanding. Around 20 years ago, I worked on the launch of Fortis Life into the protection market. I know what you're thinking. You can't possibly be that old. Before we launched, we created a set of sample communications, and we took them 20 years before consumer testing was cool into focus groups. I attended those groups in person as an observer. I sat in the room and I watched ordinary people read our documents and I listened to what they said. I remember one comment really clearly. A man had read a description about critical illness insurance and he said, I wouldn't buy that. I would just wait to see if I got cancer and buy it then, which is a bit like saying, I'm going to wait to buy home insurance until after my house has been burgled. I'm no Martin Lewis, but I'm pretty sure that's not how insurance works. This highlighted for me a really basic human truth. He wasn't going to buy it because he didn't understand it. Here's a question for you. Do you have to understand something in order to value it? Here's my answer. No. But, like being mad to work here, it helps. Let's define our terms. Value, as I'm sure every other speaker's pointing out, is a trade-off between what you give and what you get. What do you give? Money, obviously, but also your time, your effort, your attention. And what's on the other side of the seesaw, the stuff you get back? Does the product do what it's supposed to do? Does it give you a good feeling? Does it make you look good? Is it just what you need in a particular situation, like an umbrella when it's raining? And does all of that feel proportionate compared to the cost? So that's value. What about understanding? In the context of consumer behaviour, understanding means a consumer's comprehension of the product, its features, its benefits, its costs, its terms. Does the consumer grasp how the product works, what it does for them, and what they're signing up for? Understanding isn't binary. It's not do I understand or do I not understand. It's a spectrum. There are degrees from basic awareness, knowing a product exists, to familiarity, and knowing a bit about some features, to deep understanding, grasping all of the details and implications, well enough so that you could explain it to somebody else. You don't have to get to that level of deep understanding to get to value. Of course you don't. I value my smartphone. I like being able to phone my wife and kids. I like being able to take pictures of the dog and pass the time on the bus. Do I know anything about how my phone works? I very much value the internet. I like being able to book holidays, buy train tickets, or find out if certain celebrities are alive or dead. What do I know about how the internet works? Not a thing. How can I value my phone and the internet when I don't have a deep understanding of them? Because it's obvious. It's obvious what my phone and the internet can do for me. Obvious enough for me to be able to weigh those benefits against the price. But what about when the trade-off isn't as clear? While it might be true to say you don't have to have a deep understanding of a product to be able to value it, it's also true to say that lack of understanding can damage perceived value. If someone doesn't really understand what a product does or how it benefits them, like our guy in research, it's hard for them to value it highly and hard for them to be willing to pay for it. That's because the benefits aren't clear enough in their mind, whereas the costs are. What's the answer to this? Well, first up, make the benefits concrete as the costs. Let's come back to my phone. It's made by Apple. What can we learn from how Apple do things? Well, when Apple launched the iPod, they didn't talk in their advertising about how many gigs of storage it had. They talked about 1,000 songs in your pocket. There was a campaign for the iPhone years ago where the tagline was, "You're more powerful than you think." It wasn't even about the product. It was about the people who had it in their hands. The advert showed someone using their phone to operate the lights at a stadium rock concert. So Apple didn't sell technical specifications with the iPod or the iPhone. They sold experiences and feelings. So what's our equivalent? The emotional benefits rather than the feature. This money is going to keep my family living in this house. My children are going to be looked after when I'm not here. The kind of thing that resonates more than anything you'd find in a policy document. And exactly the kinds of things that people who do buy protection insurance tend to cite when you ask them what value they got from it. So we need to make benefits concrete. What else? Second, we need to clear away complexity. The more complex a product or its description is, the harder it is to understand. If you can't decipher how something works, you won't buy it. Interestingly, complexity hits us on both sides of the value equation. Think about that trade-off I mentioned earlier, the one between what you give and what you get. And then think about what we're asking people to negotiate when they interact with us. Product descriptions, you need a PhD to understand. Terms and conditions, you need to give up your weekend to read. Journeys that send you round in circles. Forms you have to print, then fill in by hand, then scan, then upload back onto your computer. All of this stuff wastes our time. It eats up our effort, saps our energy, one half of our trade-off, while getting in the way of us understanding what this product will do for us, the other half. Make a virtue of being the advisor or the insurer that doesn't do it like this, and you'll have a big competitive advantage. Because when consumers do understand our products, typically after advice or personal experience, they tend to acknowledge the value. By applying the kind of lessons I've been talking about here, we can better demonstrate value, closing the gap between the actual utility of our products and how people perceive them. Communicating value is about making sure that the benefits are concrete, vivid, that the costs are proportionate, that the customer feels supported, rewarded. Insurance might never be as exciting as a new phone, but it can be made more relatable and it can be made more accessible.
Rhys, thank you so much for that thought-provoking start to ProtectX9. What do you think? Do you agree with what Rhys has been saying? Please do leave a comment or a post on LinkedIn and include the hashtag ProtectX9. Our next speaker is from CIExpert. Please welcome to the virtual stage, Natalie Mayne.
We need to talk about what clients value in critical illness cover and how it's evolving. And not just in small ways. Our latest UK consumer research, which surveyed 5,000 people, showed that most consumers don't fully understand CI, and many have misconceptions about what it actually does. Now, let's be honest, critical illness cover isn't always the easiest thing to explain to clients. It's one of those products that many haven't heard of, assume they don't need, or misunderstand completely. And for years, we framed it in a particular way, as a way to protect a mortgage. But what the research tells us is that's not actually how most clients use their payouts, and even how they think they would. Their priorities are different from what we might assume. And that means as advisors, the conversation needs to evolve too. So today, I want to talk about some of the key insights from our critical thinking report and the insights from this market research that can connect us better with clients and position CI in a way that truly resonates with them. It's clear that arranging a mortgage is still a key trigger for consumers taking out CI. In fact, when we surveyed advisors, they told us that 76% of their conversations about CI come from mortgage-related discussions. That's where the conversation starts. But when we actually look at how clients use their payouts, the reality is very different. One of the most striking stats from the research was this: only 19% of claimants use their payout to clear a mortgage. That's far lower than many might expect. So what do they use the money for? Well, 22% of claimants use it for private medical treatment, which is understandable when you consider NHS waiting lists and the growing pressures on public healthcare. If you were seriously ill, then wouldn't you want the option to go private and get seen faster? And then there's the everyday financial reality. 28% of claimants use their payout just to cover essential expenses, which aligns with the impact a serious illness can have. Zurich's 2022 Hidden Cost of Cancer report highlighted just how financially disruptive a serious illness can be. Their research found that 78% of those diagnosed with cancer in the 2 years prior saw their monthly outgoings increase by an average of £541, on top of travel to and from the hospital, prescription costs, and lost income from time off of work. So what does this mean for your client conversations? Well, if we're leading with "this will protect your mortgage," we might actually be missing what really matters to them. A better approach might be asking, if you became seriously ill, what would you use this money for? Because for most people, the answer isn't their house. It's their health, their family, and their ability to keep their life on track. And that brings me to another shift we're seeing. Healthcare is becoming one of the biggest factors in why people take out CI. When we asked consumers what would make them more likely to take out CI, the results were telling. 67% said that they'd be more interested if they knew that their payout could help them get private treatment faster. That's a big deal. It tells us that people aren't just thinking about the money. They're thinking about how CI can help them take control of their health. And we're already seeing this play out in claims data. 1 in 5 claimants are using their payout for private healthcare. That's a significant shift. So when you're speaking with clients, bringing healthcare into the conversation could completely change how they see CI. Instead of being just another financial product, it becomes something tangible, something that gives them options and control over their treatment. This shifts CI from something abstract, a financial safety net, to something practical and personal. So instead of simply asking, how would you manage financially if you were ill? Consider asking, if you needed urgent treatment, would you want the option to go private and avoid NHS waiting times? That's the kind of question that makes clients see critical illness in a whole new light. Another area that's changing how clients view CI is added value services. These are benefits that many clients don't even realise they have, but once they do, they see real day-to-day value in their policy. In fact, our research found that 27% of people said that they'd be more likely to take out CI if it came with a free annual health check. Another 23% said having a 24/7 GP access would make a policy more appealing. Now, that might not sound like a huge percentage at first, but nearly a third of potential clients are saying something as simple as a free health check could be the thing that gets them over the line. This tells us that CI isn't about a one-time payout anymore. It's about ongoing value, something clients can use right now, not just in the event of a serious illness. Highlighting these extras in your conversations could make a policy feel more valuable. If a client can see how they benefit from a policy today, they're far more likely to see the value in keeping it for the long term. So our challenge as an industry is to start reframing the critical illness cover conversation, to shift the focus onto what actually matters to clients today, not just what we've traditionally assumed is important to them. If it's no longer just about protecting a mortgage, then what is it about? It's about giving clients financial flexibility and real choices to manage their lives through health events, not just covering a loan, but ensuring that they have options when they need them most. And that brings us to something really important. How do we assess fair value for our clients? At CIExpert, we're focused on evolving our tools and insights to help advisors assess value objectively. When considering fair value, there are a few key aspects that can make a real difference. Firstly, how broad is the condition coverage? Some policies cover the basics, while others go much further, offering a wider range of full payment conditions, as well as additional severity payments. Helping clients understand the extra value they get with a quality policy can make all the difference. Secondly, it's just as important to understand how much they will actually get paid out. The amount paid out for additional severity payments varies considerably across policies, making it an important factor in assessing value. Understanding these differences helps clients see how much financial support they could receive depending on their diagnosis. Thirdly, aligning their choice of policies with gender-specific risks. Some conditions are more common in men, others in women, yet policies vary in how well they cover those risks. Taking a gender-specific approach can help ensure that your client gets the most relevant protection for their needs. Finally, what about children's cover? Well, for many clients, protecting their children is just as important as protecting themselves. A quality policy can provide significantly better payouts and broader condition coverage, which could make all the difference if they ever need to take time off to care for them. Sometimes that's the deciding factor in whether a policy feels truly valuable to them. Overall, it's about exploring options within the right bracket for each client, considering their journey and their risks and what protection truly suits their lifestyle. Finding that sweet spot, that's where advisors make the biggest difference. Because not everybody wants a Rolls Royce. It's about balance between how much a client is willing to pay, what features they truly need, and the right level of quality for their personal situation. Anyhow, that's it from me. Thank you for your time, and I hope that's given you some food for thought.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about there, Natalie. Please welcome our next speaker to ProtectX9. From Fairer Finance, James Daley.
We need to talk about fair value.
It's a concept that I often hear people in the financial services industry talk about as being vague or nebulous, but I honestly don't think it is. Over the last few years at Fairer Finance, we've compiled and reviewed dozens of fair value assessments, and we've seen some excellent ones, as well as some poorer ones. So, over the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you what a good fair value assessment looks like, as well as some of the common mistakes that we see companies make. But I want to start by explaining why fair value assessments are important. Most of us have an intrinsic understanding of what fair value means, at least when it comes to the purchases in our daily lives. And that's because, in the case of most transactions, we make them repeatedly, and we get a feel for what a fair price is. For example, I know that the price of a pint in a London pub is usually somewhere between £5.50 and £7.50. If I walk into a bar and they're charging £8 or £9, I might consider whether the aesthetic and service is worth the premium. And if it's not, there's 1,000 other places for me to take my business. But the difference for consumers when it comes to financial services is that these are not purchases they make on a regular basis. Even when it comes to things like car insurance, you're only buying it once a year, and you may go your whole life without ever claiming and understanding the detail of the policy. And when it comes to protection, it's quite possible that it's a purchase you'll only make once in your entire life. And that means there's no room for customers to learn. So a fair value assessment is a chance to put yourself in your customer's shoes and consider whether the price they're paying is fair relative to the product features and the service that you're offering, and relative to what they could have got elsewhere. There's not an invisible line in the sand that you need to scrabble about for here, with good value on one side and poor value on the other. A good fair value assessment is about telling a credible story through data. All fair value assessments need to begin with a proper benchmarking exercise. How does your price, your product features and your service compare to other propositions in the market? Think of a scales with price on one side and product features and service on the other. If you're more expensive than most of your competitors, then you'd expect that to be justified by a better quality product or better service levels. Your brand could also be a justification for charging more, particularly in the world of insurance where your product is essentially a promise. When you're benchmarking your product, you need to make sure you're comparing yourself to the right peer group. And you need to make efforts to look at as much of the market as you can, not just one or two competitors. Next, you need to take a look at your profitability, and you need to drill down to understand what that looks like amongst different customer groups. You're not doing this exercise because there's a right and a wrong amount of profitability. You're doing it to identify whether any groups of your customers might be getting a bad deal. One of the common mistakes we see with fair value assessments is that firms look at profitability across the book. Instead, try and answer the question, who are my most profitable customers? And are they still getting as good value as my least profitable ones? Next, you need to understand whether the costs that are being passed onto your business, up or down the distribution chain, are reasonable. That means asking suppliers or distributors to share their fair value assessments with you. This can be difficult as a smaller firm, but at the very least you need to be asking for these assessments, and bigger firms need to be ready to challenge bad value that they're seeing elsewhere in the chain. Once you've gathered your data, you need to tell a story with it. There may be good reasons why your prices are high relative to your competitors. For example, as a smaller firm, you may have higher costs, which mean you can't afford to charge less, or your route to market may be more costly than your competitors. But a good fair value assessment will be honest about where the value equation may not be as compelling, and either provide mitigation or a commitment to try and improve. The expectation is not that everyone is perfect, but where you uncover elements of poor value in your proposition or charging structures, you need to make a commitment to address these over time if you can. Finally, you need to consider whether your customer understands what they're buying and whether they would make the same decision again if they were in possession of all the facts. Customer understanding is inextricably linked to fair value. If you're a broker, then it's obviously your job to help your customer understand the trade-offs and the choices that they need to make, and then to guide them to the right product. If you're a provider, you need to ensure you have the right checks in place to ensure that your distribution network is helping your customers make informed decisions. Or, if you're selling direct, you have to ensure you're giving the customer all the right information to make a good decision. Sometimes the right course of action will feel uncomfortable. In fact, we often say that if it doesn't feel a little uncomfortable while you're doing your fair value assessment, you're probably not doing it right. For example, if you're selling over 50s life insurance directly to customers and you're bringing them directly to you via TV advertising, there's a greater chance that they won't have considered their other options, which could be better for them. As a provider, your responsibility is to make them aware of the other choices in the market, as well as the limitations of your product. Yes, that means telling them very clearly that they may get back less than they pay in and that inflation will erode the value of their payout. It also means letting them know that a savings product or a funeral plan could be better for them if their main aim is to save for a funeral. Providers often assume that if they're brutally honest with their customers in this way, then they'll scare them off. In fact, it often engenders greater levels of trust and has a much smaller impact on conversion than they might have expected. But of course, it does also stop you selling products to people for whom they're not suitable. It's in everyone's interest to really embrace the spirit of the fair value rules. What we're aiming for here is a world where all consumers end up with a product that meets their needs and expectations at a price that is objectively fair. If we can achieve this, it can only build trust in our sector and improve its reputation. Protection is still a market with fairly low penetration in the UK, and that means there's enormous potential. With a market study about to get underway, the protection industry is about to find itself tested. The regulator will be taking a close look at whether firms have followed the spirit of the fair value rules and looking to make examples of those who haven't. All industries have areas they can improve, and this is the protection industry's chance to open up about its weaknesses and work together to improve them. And the prize is big. It's a bigger, more successful industry, something that's well worth playing for.
Thank you so much, James. Once again, a lot to think about. Our next speaker was also the winner of the Young Achiever Award at last year's Protection Review Awards 2024. Please welcome from Dynamo, Britney Trussler.
We need to talk about the human side of protection and how we can shift our focus of advice from cost to value. I want to start by going through a scenario. Picture this. There's a young father who's working hard to support his family. He has a wife and 2 children. He's been in the same job for years. His income is stable and he's fit and healthy. He thinks he's got time to sort out things like protection. It's just another bill, he thinks. I'll sort it out later. But the reality is that life doesn't always wait, and he's diagnosed with a serious illness soon after. Within months, his savings have completely diminished, and his wife is left struggling, trying to support the family on one income and balance the childcare. Now imagine a different scenario. Imagine that an advisor had taken the time to not only explain to him insurance and costs, but why protection matters. To help him see that it isn't just another bill, and it is the difference between having security for his family's financial future. Unfortunately, this is a scenario we see all too often in this industry. People don't look at cover until it's too late. It's not just numbers we're talking about here, it's real people and real lives. We need to shift the focus and emphasise why value must come before cost. When people hesitate about protection, it's rarely because they don't care, but it's because they view it as an optional expense rather than an essential lifeline. As advisors, we need to change the conversation. We're not just selling policies, we're offering security, peace of mind, and stability in uncertain times. We need to start by determining what value means to our clients. And that is easier said than done, as value means different things to different generations. For the older generation, that might look like more traditional security, owning a home, saving for retirement, ensuring financial stability for their family. But for the younger generation, value can look completely different. For them, it's not just about the future, it's about how something benefits their lives today. When looking at protection, an older generation might prioritise the most comprehensive cover, a reliable or well-known insurer, or strong claim statistics. Whereas for younger clients, value might look like GP services, mental health support, rewards and discounts, and a policy that can adapt as their life changes. So how do we communicate value to the younger generation in a way that resonates with them? 1. Make it flexible. Make sure your advice is offering them a recommendation that can adapt as their lifestyle evolves. They're young, they have many milestones ahead of them, and it's important that they can have a cover that can keep up and be with them through each of those life changes. 2. Highlight immediate benefits. If we know anything about the younger generation, it is that they love instant gratification. So emphasise perks like GP access, mental health support, and rewards and discounts that they can access, and show them how that policy will benefit them right now. Use relatable language. Keep it simple. Don't fill your recommendation with industry jargon. And lastly, align it with their lifestyle. Show them how protection enables financial freedom rather than restricting it. The younger generation want to know, how does this help me today? And if we can answer that, we can help them see why protection matters. We can also do this by making it tangible, giving them relatable comparisons. Clients often hesitate because protection feels like an abstract cost. We need to make it real. Instead of, this policy is going to cost you £30 a month. Try, for less than the price of your weekly takeaway, you can make sure your family never faces financial hardship. Or, you can pay for insurance to protect your car or your pet without a second thought. Shouldn't your income and family be more valuable to you? Cost is only an objection in the absence of value. When we're talking about protection, people don't buy policies, they buy emotion. No one wakes up excited to talk about insurance. What a great world it would be for us advisors if they did. But what people do want is to be able to protect the ones they love and guarantee the income that they rely on. Instead of leading with policy intricacies, lead with human connection. Ask them about their loved ones. Tell me about your family. Who depends on you? Help them visualise the impact of not having that cover in place. If you couldn't work for 6 months, what would change in your household? And lastly, make it real. Would you want your partner to have to go back to work immediately or have the time to grieve they need without additional financial stress or burden? By making protection personal, you make it a priority, a valuable life-changing tool. Let's go back to the scenario from the beginning. If someone had helped him see that protection wasn't just another bill, but the difference between security and struggle, he might have made a different choice. And that is why we do what we do. Protection isn't just about price. It's about peace of mind. It's about dignity, security, and financial resilience. And when people see the value, we don't just sell policies, we change lives. So the next time you're giving advice, remember, lead with stories, not just statistics. Make it personal, not transactional. And focus on what's gained, not what is spent. Because in the end, the true cost isn't the price of a policy. It's what you stand to lose at the risk of not having one in place.
Britney, thank you so much for that engaging and really interesting talk. What do you think of the topic so far? do please leave us a comment or put a post up on LinkedIn and use that hashtag ProtectX9. Our next speaker is from HSBC Life. Please welcome to the ProtectX9 stage, Rebecca Hammond.
We need to talk about how the value of protection is really defined. I have a question. When was the last time you felt really listened to? When was the last time someone let you really explain what you're going through? When was the last time someone let you speak and you knew they weren't just waiting for their turn to talk? It feels good when someone listens. It feels like we can trust them. So if I can trust you for the next 7 minutes, I'm going to explain why listening is the most underrated skill in our industry. We're going to begin by talking about value and what we really hear when someone says the word. As part of my job, people often ask, what is meant by the phrase, the true value of protection? In my experience, value is a word that's not only hard to define, it often depends on who is listening, whether that be an insurer, an advisor, or a customer. Sometimes it can mean price, sometimes it can mean product features, sometimes it's all about the what if. What if the worst case scenario happened? But when I listen to those answers, I hear something different. I think the real value is a combination of 3 key things: price, product, and service. Let's look at price first, as that's how many people will do it. It's all about the price. That's a really good starting point if you are looking at what we call a more simpler product, so car insurance, home insurance, mobile phone insurance, for example. However, as we know, there is so much more to life insurance and critical illness than just the monthly payment. The difference between policies for as little as 50p per month can have a significant difference to the client and what they really need from a policy. But people often don't think of protection in that way. They're used to price comparison sites, getting the cheapest price, going for the best deal from brands that they've vaguely heard of. They're used to watching direct debits go out of the bank account every month, but not actually remembering what they've signed up for or when they did that. In fact, we know many customers still don't understand the basics. The Financial Times reported last year that more than half of 18 to 40-year-olds do not understand what critical illness is for. That's more than half that sound like they could really benefit from some advice and benefit from being listened to. Because we know now, in 2025, more than ever, that these conversations are key. It should never be about the selling though, ever. It needs to be about guiding and educating these clients to their best options and listening. And don't just take my word for it. Listen to CIExpert. They've discovered in their critical thinking report that customers' attitudes shift dramatically when products and added benefits are explained properly. When we start to demystify protection, when we start to speak clearly and get beyond the jargon, that can really help customers see the value. So that's price. Now let's turn to product. No 2 protection products are the same. It will always depend on a client's individual circumstances and their lifestyle to exactly what product and what provider an advisor will be recommending. One thing that is consistent across the market is value added benefits, the engagement we are seeing from advisors and customers about these. Now, one tip I would give to you is to always mention if you're recommending a policy that has the value added benefits, make sure the client is aware of these. And an even better tip is to really help your customer quantify the true value of them benefits to them. So let's take us, HSBC Life, for example. All our policies do come with online health services, and that includes unlimited 24/7 remote GP. That can save hours or even days of the lifetime of the policy compared to contacting local GPs and waiting with their waiting times. The same goes for remote physiotherapy. It can save weeks or even months compared to waiting for an NHS appointment. That benefit there as well, it really makes sure that the client is getting back to normal life as quickly as possible. How valuable would that be to your customer? In some cases, customers value the remote GP service at as much as £50 per month just for the single benefit. That in itself, on many occasions, may be more than the customer's full protection premium. Early research shows that if clients are engaged with online health benefits that providers offer, and they're actively using these or even just aware of them, they are much less likely to cancel their cover, as they see these as real value. So that brings us on to service. Service is the element that can make or break customer experience. Service is the thing that's invisible until it's needed. I truly believe that excellent service is a must, especially during the claims journey. When a person needs to make a claim, that is often one of the most difficult times they're going to go through during their whole life, and it's a very stressful moment. Having a claims team that listens, that cares, that builds rapport, it does make all the difference. That level of service is invaluable. We recently paid a terminal illness claim for a man in his 40s with terminal cancer within just a few hours of us being contacted, and that's all because we listened. We also helped a lady who was only 45 when she was diagnosed with aggressive skin cancer, malignant melanoma. She alerted us and provided all the information we needed straight away, and we were able to validate them hospital letters. This resulted in the claim being accepted and paid for £148,000 on the same day. That's about bringing humanity to the service we provide. Listening is what makes us human. So think about the last time you really listened and the last time you felt really heard. If we listen right from the beginning of our application journey, we can make sure we really understand our clients if we're listening from that very beginning. It also means that we can offer the right product or the combination of products. And crucially, by listening, you can avoid any deliberate or accidental non-disclosure, and that leads to better outcomes for that customer if they sadly should need to ever make a claim. And that also leads to better outcomes for the industry at large as trust goes up when payout rates increase. So it's not just price, product and service. It's about listening to customers, listening to our peers and listening to the research. That's what really allows us to offer true value. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Now, our penultimate speaker is from Square Health. Please welcome Steve Casey to the ProtectX9 stage.
We need to talk about the humanity of protection, the desire to do the right things for our customers at the right time, and how do they value this. Now, whether it's a call into the customer services centre to change an address or a customer making a claim, nobody in the industry, I believe, goes out of their way not to help a customer. Nobody wakes up and thinks, I'm going to make it hard for them today. It's just that sometimes barriers are put in the way to impede this. Just listen to Crystal from Cura at ProtectX9 explaining the barriers they faced in assisting a customer making a claim. It seemed that all roads led to the computer saying no. And this is at a time when we're expected to step up to the plate. The time of reckoning to support a customer, the promise that we have made to them that we will be there for them and their family. Now, the protection gap has been around since Noah was a boy. We measure it studiously every year, but it doesn't really change. It's a large number that I think is meaningless to not only the customer, but to many advisors. We wax lyrical about it at conferences that I've been to. We try to explain it away, look at the reasons why we have this, and why our customers cannot see the benefits of products, thus shrinking it. It is an industry cliche that should be consigned to room 101. Words that consistently come up at the conferences are that of trust and value. Our customers don't trust our industry to pay out when it's due. We're always looking for ways to wiggle out with small print. Research time and time again says that many people think we'll do everything we can not to pay. They think the industry advisors are only in it for commission and will do the minimum to get a policy on risk and their hands on a lump sum of money. Now, I'm not tarring every broker with the same brush, as I think we have some exemplary brokers who provide a first-class service, especially members of the PDG. Just think the amount of time, effort and money people like LifeSearch undertake in training their people. But how do you demonstrate the value of our products and services? Nothing in life is free, and this is the mindset of the customer. The insurance product provides a promise, but what is the value of this to them? Value-add benefits provide a promise, but again, what is the value of these? But maybe it's time to stop banging our heads against a brick wall and continue with the same old approach and start looking at random things that we can grab and really demonstrate to the customer the total value of taking out a protection policy. Of course, I'm talking about value-added benefits. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that, of course, I would say this as I have a vested interest working for the largest provider of private healthcare services in the UK. But let's just unpick that a little. These services are available from day one of a policy assuming risk. Connectivity now means that a customer can receive an email on the same day inviting them to download and authenticate an app so they can access these services. I can almost guarantee that this invite will arrive long before the policy documents will. If we look specifically at GP services, which are the most accessed service associated with protection products, the customer can book a consultation at a time and place that suits them. Again, the ability to see a GP within 24 hours or at a time that suits them is a fantastic customer experience. The latter is especially true when a customer has the ability to book things around the busy demands of a family. The value of this is immeasurable. A couple of years ago, for example, we saw a huge spike in registrations coupled with a huge number of consultations between the hours of 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning. These were for children. At the time, there was a public health concern relating to strep A and scarlet fever. We were providing parents peace of mind. How do you value this? Now, this is a truly world-class service that is associated with protection products and should not be forgotten. And I think this is exactly what Bupa Individual Protection, when they offered their second medical opinion and Bright Grey introduced Helping Hand, was striving for. This was providing a first-class service in order to build rapport and demonstrate value to the customer. Now, cynics may say, is this really true? Are these services as good as they claim to be? I looked at some recent customer feedback data from one of our partner portfolios. For those who do not know, at the end of a consultation, the customer is presented with a simple feedback form of just a few questions. Now, the customer doesn't need to complete this, but nearly 10,000 do every month. So the data is credible. 92.8% of people said their GP had fully dealt with their query in one go. People scored 4.8 out of 5 for each of the following: how they rated the expert, how easy it was to use the app, and how likely they were to recommend their services to their family or friends. Now, this is a ready-made pool of ambassadors for protection if ever I saw them. It's an incredibly rich vein of data which says to me that people are experiencing a high level of service and we are building a relationship with the customer and therefore building that trust, demonstrating value that we're all striving for. And this is not just associated with GP services. Again, picking a few stats from some of the other services available, in December for mental health and well-being, customers scored 4.9 out of 5 in the clinician they had the consultation with. And 92% of people said they would recommend the services to family or friends. I will just outline one more service, and that is nutritional support, which is a more recent offering from many. In December, this scored 4.7 out of 5 for the service. Nearly 96% of people said the nutritionist dealt with their issues in the consultation. And finally, 93% of people said they would recommend the service to family or friends. I could go on, but the message is really simple. I think that people are saying they value the services available, the quality of the support that they are getting, and they trust them. That's why when the customer asks, did the service enhance the view of the insurer, research shows that in excess of 90% of people say yes. To me, the customer is saying, You are providing me with a service that I value. If I can trust them to provide this for me, then there's no reason why I cannot trust them to support me and my family when I need to make a claim. Now, I've been asked as to whether, given the popularity of the services, should a provider, perhaps a disruptor band, turn their marketing totally upside down and actually lead with the services that are available rather than statements such as, we pay 98.2% of claims. It's an interesting idea. And just as I started this short presentation, I could see several barriers being raised immediately. Questions such as how should it be shown on the portals, or should we make this contractual? But these are not insurmountable. And I think the contractual versus non-contractual debate takes us down avenues that some may not wish to go down, so perhaps that's for another day. So my message is simple. The call to action is look at value-add services that really support the customer and demonstrate value. They really resonate with the customer, so use them. Often they're in front of our noses. We just don't see them.
Well, we're already at our 7th and final speaker. Please welcome the protection coach, Matt Chapman.
We need to talk about value. Because when it comes to protection, too many people misunderstand what value actually means. We live in a world where value is often confused with cheapness, where we're conditioned to seek the lowest price rather than the greatest worth. And this is especially true in the protection world. But real value, true value, is never about cost. It's about what you stand to lose by either failing to act or by cutting corners. And when we talk about protection, the real question is not how much it costs, but what it's worth. Because protection is not just another financial product, it's an investment in someone's future. It's the tool that ensures that their goals, their dreams, and their ambitions remain achievable no matter what life throws at them. It's an essential part of everyone's financial toolkit. The problem. Now, the industry talks a lot about penetration rates, conversion figures, and even premiums. But value doesn't exist in those numbers alone. Value exists in the moment when a family gets to keep their home after a significant loss. Value exists when a father battling cancer can still provide for his kids. Value exists when a business owner suffering a stroke can still retire on their own terms. Yet too often protection is treated as a bolt-on solution, an afterthought to mortgages and even wealth planning, something to sell rather than embed. But when we stop focusing on the product and we start focusing on the human being sat in front of us, everything begins to change. The shift. So how do we shift the conversation? We stop talking about policies and we start talking about potential. We stop talking about cost and we start talking about consequences. Because nobody comes to us for a mortgage, they come to us for a home. Nobody invests just to see their numbers grow, they invest to build a future, a strong financial future. And if we position protection as the foundation of their financial success, then the conversation isn't about whether they want protection, it's about whether they want to protect the future that they're working so hard to create. And when we do this, when we align protection to their personal vision of success, everything begins to shift. Clients don't see protection as an expense anymore. They see it as an investment in their financial freedom. Advisors don't feel like salespeople anymore. They become trusted experts, guiding their clients towards their goals. And objections? Well, they disappear because the value becomes undeniable. The proof. Look, I have seen this shift in action. I've coached advisors who once struggled with protection, who saw it as a hard sell, who saw it as a very uncomfortable conversation with a customer. And when they shifted their approach, well, at one brokerage that I work with increased their full-term income protection penetration sales by 2,500% simply by adding more value through anchoring protection back to the client's long-term goals. A team of 40 mortgage and protection advisors that I work with went from struggling with protection to writing more business in 2 months than they had in the previous 12 combined, simply by connecting the need for protection back to the client's ability to get and keep their desired home. A mortgage advisor who barely sold protection alongside their recommendations started producing some of the best average premiums I've ever seen by building comprehensive financial resilience packages for their clients, structured around their life goals, all whilst delivering better outcomes for all parties. And these results, well, they weren't driven by selling harder. They were driven by advising better, by focusing on value. Because when we focus on the humanity and the value of protection, not just the price, we remove hesitation, we eliminate doubt and resistance, and we help clients see what they're truly investing in, their own future. The humanity of protection, true value. Right, so let's go back to value. What is valuable? Is it valuable to protect the home that you've just tried to buy? Is it valuable to protect the dream of early retirement? Is it valuable to ensure that your children's future remains on course and secure no matter what happens to you as their parent? Is it valuable to invest in solutions that can safeguard all of your dreams and your financial goals in life? Because value isn't about saving a few pounds each month. Value is about not losing everything that you've worked so hard for. And let's get real for a moment. If someone stops working at the age of 40 and they can't make their pension contributions for 25 years, forget the contributions themselves. The value of that lost fund over time is astronomical, and it's negligible compared to the cost of insuring it. So we're not talking about thousands, we're talking about losing hundreds of thousands potentially over the term of those contributions. And for what? To save a small monthly amount each month. That is not value. Value is ensuring that when life happens, and it inevitably does, a person can still retire comfortably. That's their goal. That they don't lose decades of growth, of compounding interest, of financial security for the sake of saving a few pounds each month. That their financial goals don't collapse the moment their income does. Because true financial value is not about cost, it's about preservation. And protection is the only tool in our arsenal that ensures someone can continue building their future no matter what life chooses to throw at them. Now, for me, that is real value. Final thoughts. So let me leave you with this. We need to stop thinking of protection as a product in the first place. We need to start thinking of it as an investment in a person's goals, their dreams, and their ambitions. Because when we do, we don't just become better advisors, we become the difference between a family thriving or a family struggling. And if that is not valuable, then I don't know what is. Let's be that difference.
Well, thank you to Matt for finishing off our 7 talks in such a positive and upbeat way. In fact, all of the talks today have been really positive and upbeat. And I think we might actually touch upon that as we get into the debate. But first of all, I'd like to introduce you to our 2 panel guests from Mortgage Intelligence, Angela Davidson, and from HSBC Life, Mark Toms. And I'd like to start by asking you to just tell us a little bit about what you do, and also maybe a little fact that most people wouldn't know about you. Angela, how about you go first?
Okay, so I'm head of protection at a mortgage network, Mortgage Intelligence. I've been in the industry for 38 years and I love protection. An interesting fact, so people might think I wouldn't be an adrenaline junkie. However, I have been on the fastest zip wire in the UK, which was in North Wales, strapped with my arms down beside me and helmet on, doing 100 miles an hour from top of a mountain down to the bottom. So there you go. So
you get a hazardous pursuits exclusion on most of your protection policies. Mark, how about yourself?
Mark Toms. I'm a National Account Manager at HSBC Life. 31 years in the industry and a passionate believer in protection and what the difference it can make to families and businesses. My story is that I'm a war evacuee. I was evacuated when my father was in the RAF, and when the Turks invaded Cyprus and the war between the Greeks and the Turks, we were evacuated out on a Hercules emergency, my mum and I, and left my dad there. So yeah, that's my story. I was only 4 years old, so yeah, a long time ago.
Well, what struck me most about today was the running themes that developed throughout the 7 talk. Now, obviously, we had a running theme of the humanity of protection and value, but another theme that definitely came across strongly to me was the theme of understanding. And I think that Rhys said it really eloquently, that if something's really complicated, then people might not value it if they don't understand it. However, if they do understand something, then they will value it quite a lot. And that also came across in what Rebecca and Britney were saying as well, in how people appreciate value. So I just thought we'd start off, Angela, maybe by thinking about some of those high-level themes that we've heard today. What struck you as the important issues coming up?
I think what struck me is that we are part of an industry where we really we are passionate about doing the right thing for people, and that was all the way through. We all have this real duty of care, and we want to get that across and do what's right by folk. And I think that's just, I'm really proud to be part and belong to this industry when you hear that theme running through every speaker today.
Do what's right by folk.
Yes.
That could be a strap line on some marketing, couldn't it? Mark, what about yourself?
It was I think pretty much everybody repeated the similar message, that the importance of listening and hearing. You know, we all listen when people talk, but do we actually hear what they're saying? Are we noting down, as we said previously, are we noting down what they're saying? Are we using tactics to really understand what they're saying before anywhere near providing any kind of solution? And replaying that back to them, if we could, would that make a difference? Those kind of skills. We don't sit in people's lounges anymore, do we, and talk about cats, which we all are fans of, or successes of the family, and really engage with customers in a way that's relationship building. That happens less and less, but that needs to happen. We need to get back to that to help customers trust us as advisors, and we're part of that value statement.
I think it is that conversation. It's getting to know people in almost quite personally, isn't it? And maybe we've lost the ability, if we ever even had it, of being able to genuinely listen to what people are saying. I mean, even now, even though I'm aware of it, I'm having a conversation with somebody and they start talking and I'm hearing what they're saying, but in my head, it's probably, what am I going to say in response? So I'm not really hearing them. I'm not really listening to them. And maybe that's something we have to teach people as part of training within our businesses to get them to understand the importance of that.
Yeah, it's a lost skill. I mean, selling has a bad name, and we're told not to use the term selling. Rebecca said it's not about selling, and it isn't about selling. It is about making differences to people's lives. But the selling to me is about that engagement with the customer and understanding and moving and listening and hearing and building solutions around what they perceive as value, which is clear throughout the videos that we saw today.
Yeah, one of the openings to speeches that I used to make at marketing conferences was something along the lines of marketing as a deep, almost obsessive understanding of the customer. When you think about it, it all starts with the customer. Your products, your service, your communications messages, your slogans, your straplines, your advertising, it's all going to come from the understanding of the customer. So from a corporate point of view, how do we get better at that? Because sometimes I do wonder whether we maybe understand the advisors more than we understand the advisor's end customer.
It's an excellent point. I think we've got two sets of customers as life companies. We've got the broker and we've got our policy holders. And we need to understand both points of view. You know, we believe that our brokers have got their customers' best heart in mind, and they want to do the best by their customers. So we listen to them, but equally we've got to listen to what customers, and we do that at HSBC Life. We've been through a significant amount of research around financial resilience, a fellowship with Oxford University, which has driven our campaign around financial resilience right now, and making sure that we're approaching customers in a way that is valuable to them and to the broker. But I think I spoke earlier on about the things that we can do to engage more with customers. I think we can do more from a comms perspective to make sure that, I think it was Rhys talked about the spectrum of understanding. And we can do more to help customers understand, particularly some of the more complex arenas like CI, maybe IP, around what we do there, what we produce, how we communicate that. So there's more we can do there. Research we've done around customers' need for health and wellbeing benefits and what would help them and what they would see as value drove us to do 16 to 23-year-olds mental health counselling, an epidemic for 12 to 23-year-olds in the UK. So we've provided that to customers based upon customer feedback. As saying with mental health outcomes, 84% of mental health outcomes get ordinary rates, and with diabetes as well. That inclusivity piece is just as important, all based upon customer research. And we can do more and more and more of that laser focus on customer need.
And I think that when Rhys was talking about customer understanding, he was actually saying if something's very complicated, then they might not value it. So building upon what Mark's just said there, Angela, what do you think we can do as an industry to perhaps focus in a little bit more on our communications to overcome the complexity? I mean, let's face it, critical illness products are very complicated. Even a mortgage, once you actually get into the nitty-gritty of it, can be quite complicated. So how do we make people value something that is complicated?
So absolutely, critical illness contracts are complicated. The definitions we know have got more complex over the years, but ultimately it's the client's needs that we need to relate to. And I think that we spoke about this earlier. Some clients will be detailed focused and like to know the ins and outs of everything. So if we can deliver that to them with reports that show them, the difference in the definitions and why we've chosen certain elements over others, that's great. Other clients, it might be, let's keep it really basic here. We know that cancer, heart attack, stroke account for about 80% of claims. And if we talk to clients and listen and say, what things would you be worried about? What sort of illnesses might you think about that could cause issues, for yourselves in the future? Most likely, cancer's going to come up, isn't it? Number one. And keep to those more generic, things that people do prey upon, and just give them a very broad outline of all the other definitions that are there in the background, because we know there are other things that can happen. But I think it's horses for courses. Try and understand how in-depth your clients need to know what the cover is, or do they just need to know there is a security blanket around them? And I remember different conversations depending on who I was speaking to when I was advising.
I mean, it may be the fact that Rhys said, we don't have to understand how an iPhone works in order to get benefit out of it. I don't understand how a car engine works, but I'm happy as long as the car gets me from A to B. And maybe as an industry, we have obsessed a little bit too much about the complexities of how the products work, the critical illness definitions, the guaranteed insurability options, and all of that sort of thing. Moving on to younger people, I was really taken by Britney's talk. Again, very engaging, very upbeat. But specifically, Britney's such a good storyteller, and she told loads of stories in her very short talk. But one of the things that struck me most was this whole thing about what appeals perhaps to younger people. And what we haven't really heard today is much talk about sum assureds. How much cover should people have? I don't think that was mentioned even once. We've probably not talked much about premiums. We talk more about the emotional benefits of products. But what came across from what Britney was saying was that if we want to approach younger people and get them to engage with protection, maybe it's the things like the added value services that will be more interesting to them than the figure of the sum insured or the amount of the premium. So again, as an industry, we've got a lot to think about when it comes to young people. So having heard what Britney says, Mark, what would you in HSBC be doing to engage Generation Z?
Well, it's interesting.
Or Z.
And Alpha's coming through as well now, we believe. But yeah, it's interesting, 3 people over 50 talking about the younger generation in an interesting perspective. But research that's been out recently talks about that HSBC has done around purchase behaviours for the health and wellbeing benefits. demonstrates that there's health and wellbeing benefits that people are engaging with anyway, the counselling services, the physiotherapy, second medical opinion, that costs them money. And having a service like the health and wellbeing benefit actually saves them money because they're not having to spend it anymore. They are repeat issues. Having a physiotherapy need is a repeat issue, it doesn't go away. So having 8 an HSBC Life's example sessions a year will be valuable to them. So that's got tangibility. If you talk about it in that way, you're creating a value, and we at Square Health, our partners tell us it's £50,000 worth of value. Talked in that way, you're actually giving some value. In terms of retention as well, health and wellbeing benefits, the statistics that we've worked through tells us that the improvement in lapse rate goes down by 39% purely by having a health and wellbeing benefit, or the customer engaging with health and wellbeing, which actually means that it's better for your business to be discussing these things as well. But to Britney's point, I think, yes, you need to make sure that what that customer values, whether they're younger and it's the health and wellbeing benefit or not, that they understand that exists, and it's almost discussed side by side with the main benefit. There's been a lot of talk about whether health and wellbeing benefits becomes its own policy in its own right, and certainly Zurich have taken it in that direction with Accelerate, and that's the direction of travel. I think we discussed that when you started it at Bright Grey, that actually they were pretty much throwaway benefits. Now they're not. They're really valuable benefits that will help people.
I think that really came across today throughout the 7 speeches, is we were talking so much more about the benefits, the real benefits, as opposed to, in previous conferences, it's all about premiums and sum insureds and options within the policy. Angela, sticking with young people, I know you had some views about the mental health issue here. We've a lot of young people between the ages of 16 and 23, they've been through the lockdown. That's 5 years ago now, but the effects were still feeling that. And again, I got the impression from what Britney was saying is that some of those added value services benefits, which are particularly focused on mental health and well-being, are really important, and maybe that's another area of focus for us.
Absolutely. If you think about our generation, nobody talked about mental health. But I'm pleased to say that, it is much more commonplace now. And I think the generation that Britney was talking about, these young people who are getting homes now and starting out in their careers and what have you, are far more likely to talk about problems and also accept help and look for help. And having these benefits attached to a policy will make it more valuable to them. And it's an instant, she did say the words instant gratification. If you can get use from a policy from day one, or at least know that it's there in case you needed it, that's where the brownie points come in. They will almost see the premium and the sum assured as an added benefit, as opposed to the stuff that they can get a hold of now. And as for the GP 24/7, if they've got young family, all of these things just add to reasons why this is going to be something that they're going to keep a hold of. Because it isn't just that sum assured that, hopefully we're not going to ever have to claim on. It is something that we can really use and benefit our daily lives. Yeah. So I think it's great stuff.
I think that James came up with something today which really made me sit back and think, I've never thought of this before. And he was talking about price and value, but I think this applies as well to the understanding and to the ongoing nature of the policies that we're talking about. And what James said is that people know how much a pint of beer is because it's likely that they go to the pub quite often and have a pint of beer or a coffee in a coffee shop. Because it's a regular purchase, they know what the value is. And even with something like car insurance or home insurance, because it's an annual purchase, they're probably more aware of how much it costs and what's valuable or not. Whereas with protection, it might be a once or twice in a lifetime purchase, and therefore there isn't that understanding. And I'm sitting there agreeing with him, thinking, yeah, I can see the value. But then when we've been talking about it here, it's also that ongoing nature of the product relationships. You take out your protection product, and yes, I know we might get annual statements now, but we still don't have that interaction, do we? Mm-hmm. So in the pub, you're getting the interaction. You're even with your home contents. Every year, you're probably thinking, well, I bought a new telly, so I'll have to up that bit, or got some new jewellery, I have to up the cover for that. But with protection, it's not the same. You're not getting that interaction. So maybe the added value services, those day in, day out interactions with things like the GP24, those are those touch points. So how can we communicate the ongoing value of our products more based upon that? Mark, what do you think?
I think it's back to staying close to your customers. It's that relationship building. If you're constantly close to your customer and something happens to them, you know that something's occurred, you can say to them proactively, have you engaged with a 24/7 GP? Have you used that? That might be able to help you, or physiotherapy or mental health counselling. So it's being close to your customer. The other part of it, which HSBC Life does, and one or two others, is that annual renewal statement, to remind the customer what they've got, how they access it, and the value it has for them every single year, year in, year out. We can do more on that, though. I think there's more. There's like, I hate the term value-added benefit. I think health and well-being is what we should all describe it as. But we should go back with regular updates on health and well-being, lifestyle, what it may be, that would continuously engage the customer. I think there's something there that we could do more of.
Mm-hmm. Angela, what do you think?
I agree with what you said, Mark. I do think we talk about, in fact, it was mentioned today, having products that can be flexible and how they might change as the needs of the client change over the years. But to me, it's about the advisor being side by side with that client and changing and helping them adapt over the years, adapting their cover for them. I believe that the first thing an advisor should sell is themselves and their service, and long-term relationships. And going back to Britney's talk about younger clients, I think they would really like that concept. It isn't that she said not to be transactional, and that's exactly what we shouldn't be. And I think that has happened. That's been the course of things over the last few years. Establish, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be looking after you, we're going to regularly review your circumstances, not your policy, your life, what your goals are, where you want to go in your life, and I'm going to be here beside you should you need to claim or change things as time goes by. So yes, I really think communication is key, but it's gaining those long-term relationships at the very beginning.
It's really interesting, isn't it? We're getting a lot of wisdom from our younger advisors through ProtectX today. And I was thinking back to ProtectX Live on stage at the Protection Review Conference last November 2024. It was Ellie Collis who was on stage. And one of the things that she said was, this is what I would look for in an advisor. An advisor would be empathetic, not transactional. All of the things that you've just said there is what younger people would be looking for in a financial advisor. And I think that's quite interesting, how it's become less transactional and more emotional and more about the stories and the way it interacts with our lives.
Rhys talked about brutal honesty as well.
Brutal honesty. Yeah.
And I think if you've got that trusted partner relationship, that trusted guide through financial services, you can be brutally honest, and they will respect that, and you'll have a much better value conversation as a result of that brutal honesty. Mm-hmm.
One thing as well, when Steve Casey started talking about added value services, it did remind me of the early days at Bright Grey when the helping hand was first developed. And I think around the development table, somebody, it might have been me, said something like, do you think we'd ever get to the stage where people buy protection products for the added value services as opposed to the financial benefits? And I think we thought it was probably unlikely in the short term, but maybe in the long term. Well, that was 20 odd years ago. And maybe we're getting there a little bit more. I don't think Steve was convinced, but what are your views on that? Are we getting to that tipping point, or is it still always going to be about the financial stuff?
I don't think we're near it yet. There is a direction of travel to continuously improve these benefits, but they've got to be of value. They can't just be additional little add-ons that you can flag up as more. I think there is a point, and as I said before, Zurich have already sort of started to do this, where I think we could see that it's a separate product, or it's a product that's just as, if not more valuable than the main benefit. But that's down to the customer's perspective again. What do they deem as value? It's not for us to dictate to them. It's for them to say, well, that's what value is, and for the advisor to say, well, that does that. And so, whatever we do has to be valuable, has to have a purpose.
Talking about 20 years passing, I can't believe that it's 20 years ago since Bright Grey, but it's even longer since the development of critical illness. I mean, that must be coming on 40 odd years now. Maybe it was the early 80s, wasn't it?
It was.
And just thinking about what Natalie was saying, because let's face it, CIExpert is a business whose sole purpose is to try to make a complicated product easier to understand. The fact that a business had to be developed to do that says quite a lot about the complexity of our industry. Do you think that if we were doing all the things that we've said in this discussion about understanding customers and really getting to the nitty-gritty of what they want, do you think we would have built critical illness to be such a complicated thing now if we'd had this hindsight 40 years ago? I mean, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I just thought it'd be interesting to get your view on that.
It is a complex product, but to provide it in any other way, how would you do that? We're all the tail wags the dog in many sort of circumstances as reinsurers, and the risk that we lay onto them, and then the demands that they have. I'm not sure how you could do it differently and still have the risk controls that we all need to have to be able to provide it and to provide a reasonable premium. Let's face it, those risk controls provide the reasonable premium. So I think it's back to how we describe it, and we describe it in the way that the customer wishes us to describe it. So if it's, as Angela said earlier on, if it's a customer that just wants headlines and I'm happy it does what it should do, or if somebody wants nitty-gritty detail, we can provide them with any of those, or just in the middle, the so what's. It does this, which means to me, whatever it is, there's a range of stories that make a valued conversation difference to the customer.
And Angela, from a mortgage point of view, what do you think about the complexity of critical illness cover? In a mortgage sale, there's a lot to talk about. And then you have to add onto that a conversation about a product with 100 different definitions.
Yeah, there is. I don't think you need to go through all of the definitions, as I said before, because we can give reports for those who do need it, and we can give the headlines to others. I think mortgage is the point at which, we know it is. It's the more people engage with financial services and protection at that point than any other time in their lives. But I really think that we've got to talk in a different way about critical illness with mortgages, as Natalie said. It isn't, this is going to be here. If you have a critical illness, you can pay off your mortgage, because we know most people don't. And I'll go back a long time ago to when I was an advisor. It would be critical illness cover is for whatever you want it to be. And I think opening that up in people's minds, it will open doorways for them, because it's for whatever they choose. It might be to pay off their mortgage, but we know darn right that they use it for other things. And that's where that relationship with the advisor that we were talking about is really important, because should there be a claim, actually they do need the advisor's advice, I believe, as to which direction to put that money into. So it might not be their best interest to pay off their mortgage at that point in time, or it might be. But it's lovely to know if an advisor is behind them at that point of claim as well, if a critical illness comes up in their lives.
I think that it seems to me from what we've heard today that it's a combination of a greater understanding on behalf of product providers and advisors of their clients and customers, combined with all of us helping people gain a greater understanding of what the products are. And that perhaps means either simplifying the products or at least simplifying the communication. Those two things added together will make people value protection more. And then I started thinking about what James Daley was saying about profitability. And sometimes we don't like to talk about profit, don't we? But I was taken by that comment that he made that do we look at the profitability of different segments of customers? And our most profitable customers, perhaps, do we make sure that they feel as if they are getting the respective value out of that? And is there more we can be doing there? Now, that's quite difficult and actuarial, but what's your view on that?
Well, what I liked about James was everything he was saying was sort of aimed at a financial advisor or a life company sort of fair value assessment. And I was thinking to myself, should we be doing a fair value assessment per customer? And then that would bring in, well, I'm making a certain amount of profit. What am I giving to this customer as a result of that? The give and get that Rhys talked about. I think that kind of framework, that advice framework in a mindset of an advisor is a really good one for them to constantly be thinking, am I giving value to this customer based upon the conversations I'm having, the promise that they've got and the value that they perceive?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. And believe it or not, we are almost at the end of our half hour. I think, Angela, you said before we could probably talk all day, and we're only halfway down the list of things that I've got noted down here to say. So let's try to start bringing things to a close. And perhaps what I'd like to ask you is one takeout that's resonated with you most, or one piece of action that you're going to take as a result of the debate we've had here and the 7 speeches that we've listened to. Angela, do you want to go first?
I think the takeaway from me is that I'm really heartened by our industry. I think we all have the right attitude, and we all want what's best for people. So it inspires me to keep banging the drum. It is something that has to keep on going. It's not one size fits all protection. We really need to adapt, but just to keep cheering each other on as well, because we have to grow and be encouraged by the likes of those speakers who were there today.
And Mark?
I think what I'll take back to our senior management and specifically our marketing team is around how we communicate our policies and what they do to customers, giving advisors the tools to be able to communicate in the way that the customer wishes them to communicate. So, as going back to the point of, if you want the full detail, if you want simplicity, or if you want the what ifs, the so whats, we've got the tools to be able to provide that so that you can prove the value.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're at the end of ProtectX9. Thank you for everybody who's tuned in today to watch. I've really enjoyed it as always. The 7 speeches were really interesting, very upbeat, very positive. So thank you to our 7 speakers. Thank you to Mark and to Angela for the interesting debate. And the debate doesn't stop here because the programme is finished. We'd like you to continue the debate on LinkedIn. So do please continue to comment, continue to pontificate, and use that hashtag ProtectX9, and we'll be watching and we'll be adding our own comments over the next few days. Just before we close, a couple of reminders. ProtectZ, which is our conference for where every speaker is under the age of 30, is on the 19th of June here in central London. If you want to attend, everybody is entitled to 1 free ticket, and there's a small charge for any tickets over and above that. And of course, the Protection Review Conference Dinner and Awards is at the fabulous landmark hotel once again on the 27th of November 2025. Believe it or not, we have sold over half of the table. So if you want to come to the dinner and awards, you're going to need to get that table booked as soon as possible. So thank you very much again from me. We will see you soon, and thank you for watching ProtectX9.